Hey everyone, welcome to the Rochford Files with your host. That's kind of between the coast. Coming to you live from the Mile Highland City. It's Andrew Rochford. Come to you on a nice, chill Sunday night. Talking about a lot of important stuff. As usual, sometimes I'm later than other people to it, but it's still very important to be covered. And it's nice to have people in early. Purple Heart goes out to you as well. Hey, Yipper99. Uncle Warren. Rebuilding Biloxi, Mississippi. Hey, Ellie. WCSN. Funny, I was really hoping that CU would pull off the winless season from a Power 5 conference school. So that was a... Hey, Kelly. Damn, everyone's here early tonight. That's very nice to see. But I think it helped that I said on Warren's Secret Midnight show that I was going live at this time. So I think that worked well. And I also think that since there's not really anyone else live right now, that is working in my favor too. So don't forget to, if you're on the YouTube side of things, click the like button. If you're new, subscribe. Share it to a new place or a familiar place. Then on the Twitch end of things, click the follow button. So that will also be another way to help me grow on Twitch. And let's, I think we're to the point where we can just dive right into what happened earlier this week when a couple guys, Jose Vega and Kynan Dislifwait, both went to a AOC town hall to confront her over her decision to fund the Ukraine in the part of the U.S.'s proxy war with Russia. So let's go to their video first before we dive into other angles of this. So we'll start here.
Congresswoman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because they're voting for us. Okay? You originally voted, you ran as an outsider, yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine. You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China.
He ain't saying anything wrong there. And I noticed a lot of the left, they got hung up on that whole Tulsi Gabbard thing because, yeah, there's parts of her that is disingenuous, even though with as sad as it is, from a foreign policy standpoint, even when you're as inconsistent as, say, Tulsi Gabbard, that's still better than virtually anyone else that's been in Congress outside of Mike Gravel. That's how pathetic that the establishment is as on their foreign policy. And also back to the point of some of the left getting really hung up on the Tulsi Gabbard thing. To me, it didn't really do much to take away from the point that they were trying to make here. It's like at the end of a quarter, when you throw up that 3/4 quart shot, if it works out, it goes in and you get 3 extra points. But if you're that concerned about your percentages and you wait until you see the lights start to turn red, then what's the point, really? So that's my view on it. That little thing did not really take away overall from the point at hand that they're trying to make here.
Why are you playing with the lives of American citizens? You're playing with our lives.
There will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you've shown cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against. That's what you've become. You are the establishment, and you are the reason why everybody will end up in a nuclear war unless you choose to stand up right now and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you do that? Yes or no? Okay, simple. Are you going to stop nuclear war? Yes or no? There is no line, because this is bullshit. None of this matters if we're all dead. None of it. You know that. Then let's take it up right now. This is the only thing that matters right now. We could get a nuclear war at any minute, and you continue to fund it. That's what's going on. Why not right now? You're the liar here. Nobody has held you accountable. That's what's happening. And it is time for you to stand up and realize that what you've been saying has been lies. Let your conscience come through for once.
As you can see, that right there is what should be happening to just about every politician in this country right now. Everyone who's ever funded war, not just this recent war, the current thing, which is this proxy war between Russia and Ukraine. Yes, I believe that he is in that district because I think him and Kynan both are in New York. I know that they were on RBN on Friday. I mean, Jose, he was on RBN Friday, and I know him and Kynan are going to be on Tara Reid's show tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for you, Kelly, and WCSN. But the point is, this is something that every politician should be held with their feet to the fire. Yes, that right there is exactly it. And unlike Jamal Bowman, who could barely speak and was left speechless when Jose went to confront him on funding the Ukraine, it's the same. AOC tried to, you saw how much smaller her voice got when she got challenged. And also notice how, for someone who has 13.5 million Twitter followers, how small of a crowd that she had at that town hall. Look at all the empty seats. I mean, it's easy to excuse like capitalism for preventing better turnout, but that also shows how much the lack of popularity is on our front. And for the part of holding politicians accountable, It should start with the ones who are closest to you. That's where it should always begin. And obviously, so-called progressives are the ones who are closer to us on the left, and also the fact that they are supposed to be the ones who are supposed to represent us. At least that's what they said on their first campaign. And that's why they should be the ones who have to be targeted first. Then after that, I suppose you could make your standard establishment Democrats answer for this, but it always has to start with them, not this wasted energy on people who won't be moved as well. Let's see, let's just call her what she wants to be called. AOC, the baby bear, cuddling with war criminal Mama Bear Pelosi. And we know that Nancy is going to be on that insider trading blitz whenever that next thing comes to fruition, which could be Taiwan, but we'll see. But we gotta go. But then the following day, we got Mehdi Hassan coming to her defense. He, that so-called progressive MSNBC host. Let's see what he said about this. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Screaming hysterically about opposing war while praising Tulsi Gabbard, avoiding any mention of Vladimir Putin, and blaming AOC. Embarrassing. And that right there is a clown post by Mehdi Hassan, because that's the whole Putin derangement syndrome that a lot of these so-called professional managerial class progressives now have from the moment that Russia decided to retaliate back in February. And they're still hung up on the whole who invaded who first argument. And once again, this isn't something that while it is true, and we could criticize that as well, it's not like it did give him a perfect diversion, but it is something that we can still focus on what's most important here in this moment, and that's the danger of nuclear war. And for those who aren't completely caught up in the U.S. corporate propaganda machine, you'll be able to see that it isn't exactly the way they're portraying. One protester accuses AOC of voting to start this war in Ukraine. Really, AOC, in addition to being a New York rep, is a member of the Russian Duma and controls the Russian armed forces? I did not know that. What you're not knowing is Russia has been more open to the diplomatic negotiation for peace in this, while it's continuously Ukraine who has been refusing to go to the table and put an end to this on their side of things. and AOC, in a predictable AOC fashion, she went to prop up someone who came to her defense. The worst part, which of course they cut from the clip, is the fact that they were yelling over a deaf constituent asking a question and continued to do so when it was made clear to them they were yelling over a person with a disability. Let's be real. If there's a actual danger of the nuclear war and it kicks up, then everyone's going to be completely unabled. But this also got debunked, as AOC was not, there was no deaf constituent asking a question. AOC was really reading a letter from a deaf constituent, which is not the same, by the way. Yes, and exactly, Kelly, and that's what I just brought up the example. You could be disabled, but still live in a society that's not in danger of nuclear attack, or you could be, none of us could be here anymore, really. But this is typical diversion fashion from her. She always will find the most convenient shield to get away from the issue at hand. The issue at hand is a progressive is supposed to be challenging the U.S. empire and its imperialism. And that includes the funding of Ukraine, funding of the Iron Dome, among many other things. Not only that, challenging sanctions that are placed on other countries. And that also takes place in the halls of Congress. And if you're voting yes, regardless of whether your vote's just 1 in 500, you're still complicit in those choices. WCSN, Ukraine in the membrane, Ukraine in the brain. Quote, progressive Nazis. Very, very, very contradictory, I must say. And spies like us, an unused weapon is completely useless when the military-industrial complex tries to start a nuclear war with the Russians in the mid-80s. So, now I'm about to show you what happened to Jose Vega after this video started to blow up on Twitter. Because that part is an important detail
Congresswoman,
to include into this segment. It took me a moment because I didn't have the right page up, but now I do. So you know what happened when AOC was breaking out her identity politics shield to justify avoiding the hard answers to real serious issues that should be of the utmost concern, especially of the world? I am out of Twitter jail. Will AOC do the morally correct thing and stop voting yes to sending money to Ukraine? You and I both know that this is not what you set out to do in Congress. You can change course now, take a real stand, and put an end to this madness. I think, Jose, that you would. I know that most of us were hopeful that this could be a. She could live up to that original campaign promise, but now, remember the thread where she got unveiled for what she really is? Not that working class bartender, the person who went to Boston University and studied in international affairs, very much uh, in a field where it teaches you to get along and go along with the State Department. And that is what AOC is doing right from the get go. She deferred when it came time to challenge the establishment on Venezuela. She uh, pretty much rides the fence when it came to speaking on Cuba. She used to uh, do performative crying photos at Trump's cages, but now she won't even show up when they're Joe Biden's cages. In fact, he was the vice president of the president who originally put the cages up. Yes, very much true, Kelly. Very much true, Kelly. In modern and moral wealthy society, no American should be poor to live. 100% people funded, no lobbyists. She, her. Well, once again, that all is for naught when she gets influenced without taking corporate money. She gets given all the big uh, celebrity opportunities to get converted into just another Democrat. Yes, I was. This is a very interesting point to bring up because some of these progressives who do kick flips and cartwheels when they when Chomsky tells people that they need to continue voting for the lesser of two evils, and that fighting for Medicare for all right now is like giving a kid candy. But they completely turn on him when he has a correct take on what needs to happen when it comes to this between Russia and Ukraine. And that's diplomacy. And even though Donald Trump, and it's easy for Donald Trump to say it because he's not being, he's not having his hands tied right now by a war-hungry Congress, even though he's also saying very similar. Yes, a great thread on this, which I referenced to a few minutes ago to VCSN, that's on Twitter. When we found out she wasn't poor, had no student loans, was not she Robin Hood? D voted for crime and Nazi funding. C. But I know that they also tried to bring up some old tweets on Jose Vega, which showed that, which they try to use to discard his criticisms. So this is another tweet of his calling out AOC, a Puerto Rican woman, Hey, how about our interaction? Will you answer for the billions of dollars sent to Ukraine? 60 million for Puerto Rico, which is nothing but a fucking joke. But Ukraine, sure, here's 60 billion. So, where was she at? Trying to speak out for the citizens of Puerto Rico, which lost their power and have gone through another hurricane and need help recovering. And all we got was Joe Biden pretending to have a connection to the Puerto Rican community. And if AOC was serious, she would be calling that shit out. In the same way that parts of the black community went in on Joe Biden when he told Charlemagne the God, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. And that's the type of pushback that someone who is serious about fighting would be doing. Oh, yeah, and this is one of the tweets that they use to invalidate the basis of the argument that Jose helped make in that town hall again. And they used a tweet from a few days before January 6th. Who's blaming the president? I voted for Trump twice. Pompeo needs to go before he starts a war with Iran and leads us all into World War III. Growth always starts somewhere. Think about it. Of all the people who are attacking him for his past, they're the ones who are still telling you to continuously vote for the Democrats, regardless of how much shittier and shittier that they get over time. But if Jose has moved to their left, accelerated to their left in that amount of time, what's important is where he's at now. And even if he used to support Trump, he rightfully pointed out an accurate assessment of Mike Pompeo, as he even was on Twitter this past week pushing to provoke Russia more. And calling him enough. What's right is the fact that the action is correct. And there's going to be moments where there's going to be people from flawed organizations are going to take the right actions. Or flawed connections. There was even moments where the People's Party had the right direct actions. But instead of attacking the people who are taking part in the action, that means that there needs to be more people taking upon the course of following those actions as well. If we were in the right place, we would be seeing this shit daily. We would see the videos ad nauseum of people yelling at politicians for all the shit they're not doing right now. And the fact that we only get to see these moments maybe about an average of once a week at best, that's a sign that the people are not angry enough as a whole, or that these politicians are doing a very good job of making sure that they're hard to be seen in public. And from my point of view, right now, they're not doing enough. People aren't doing enough just yet. They would conveniently ignore that point, Kelly, easily if they knew that he was someone who had voted Joe Biden in the past. That right there is hook, line, and sinker. But the fact that most of these progressives who are going to continue to fall in line and vote for Joe, Kamala, Pete, or Amy, whoever the fuck it is, as the Democratic nominee in 2024, they do not have the ground to stand on to scrutinize his past like that. And people have brought up like the La Roche organization, that some people do have issues with that. But we don't really, the La Rocheite. Apparently the people try to say that it's like some fascist opt, but once again, that does not invalidate the action of this moment that they did. And if only people who are so-called flawed are trying to show you the right things to do, that means more people need to be taking part in this. But now let's go to the brain war. We got to feature a couple of these progressives in this to show you how they. Well, Kyle Kulinski was more direct in this point of responding to this video. Then, since I don't think anyone's really highlighted Hassan Piker's current take on this either, so I think I'm going to work that in too. So I'm going to start off with the Kyle Kulinski video in response to this. Let's take a look at that title first. Hey, shout out to Ellie and Go Start for being new subs before I get into that. But look at the title of this shit. AOC confronted by anti-war, quote, anti-war, Tulsi fans. And guess what? Even some of the left had, even those of us who have gotten past the whole belief in politicians, had moments of being fans of even just a couple politicians.
All right, guys. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was doing an event, a Q&A event, and it looks like it's probably from her district in New York, although I'm not 100% sure. But this video is going viral on Twitter because she got confronted by anti-war protesters. Now, they don't put anti-war in air quotes. I'm going to put anti-war in air quotes. So let's break it down. Let's see what's fair, what's unfair, and all that stuff.
And Kyle Kulinski being anti-war should be an asterisk for him and any of the other professional managerial class.
And we'll try to see who's right, what makes the most sense, etc. Let's do it.
Congresswoman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because they're under us. Okay? You originally voted, you ran
let me pause it already, because this guy's saying Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party because they are war hawks. That is not the only reason she left the Democratic Party. That was one of, like, what, 5, 6, 7 different reasons why she left. And most of the reasons why she left were actually right-wing criticisms. Stuff like, oh, they don't care about religious freedom. They don't care about the rule of law.
That is, even though Kyle's interpretation is, oh, they don't care about the rule of law. Even though that is actually kind of true, Kyle. Why would the Democrats sick the FBI on Republicans if they didn't care about the rule of law? And it's a good point to bring up why the right suddenly got critical of the FBI, by the way. So there are moments where Democrats don't care about the rule of law.
Stuff that honestly is garbage. And if you don't take my word for that, go and watch my full breakdown of Tulsi's announcement that she's leaving the Democratic Party. Now, since that happened, we get this in the Hill. Gabbard to stump for Trump-aligned New Hampshire Senate candidate. There are some people who think, hey, Tulsi's leaving the Democratic Party, and she's going to, whatever, like join the Green Party or join some other left-wing third party, and that's why she's doing it, because she's so principled and she's still criticizing Democrats from their left. That's not true. That's not true. Tulsi has, for about a year now, been most of the criticisms she has of the Democrats are actually from their right, not from their left. Like when she said about Build Back Better, that, it's big government spending and the government's already too big. That's a right-wing criticism. There is no other interpretation of that. That's just what that is. And a lot of the stuff in Build Back Better was stuff that Tulsi had previously supported. Stuff like universal pre-K and elder care, negotiating for lower prescription drug prices, Medicare expansion. So for her to say that's big government, so I don't like it, that's a right-wing criticism. For her to say Democrats don't care about religious freedom, religious liberty, that's a right-wing criticism. I don't know why you would seize on the one thing, which was nominally a left criticism, which is, oh, the Democratic Party are war hawks. But then she also immediately stumps for Republicans. That party is also full of war hawks. In fact, it is worse. Trump had a worse foreign policy than Joe Biden does.
Oh, come on. Come on. You're really going to go down that well, Kyle? Because were we in danger of nuclear attack or nuclear war under Trump? Not saying his foreign policy was any better. The only difference was we weren't approaching this level of danger that we are now. And he had actually been trying to improve relations with the people that corporate media have been telling you are crazy dictators, even though he had to pretend to be more antagonistic towards Putin in order to get people off of the whole Russia-gating bullshit. And this Ukraine-Russia proxy war is absolutely an extension of Russiagate. And Kyle doesn't even, working in this Walker Bragman, one of the biggest shills of Big Pharma that is a so-called on the left.
He was on Fox News saying, I can't wait to roll that back. So he actively wants higher drug prices. Tulsi's stumping for him. And wants to end the direct election of senators. He opposes legal abortion, has promoted Trump's big lie, and suggested that COVID jabs are installing microchips for Bill Gates. Well, that's nice. That's glorious.
Oh, what's funny is Bill Gates is definitely part of this whole like thing to get people under taking like basic civil liberties away from humans, and this whole loss of control, and like Kyle's, oh, that's fine, that's BS. And I don't even think Kyle has ever like addressed a Bill Gates clip recently, especially related to the jabs. Yes, essentially the same foreign policy, just that Trump wasn't like actively making things worse, except the whole failed Venezuela coup. But Biden definitely has been more aggressively making things worse in a short amount of time so far. Other than the normal standard course of like drones and airstrikes that can easily be done without boots on the ground.
Really cool stuff. All right, let's run this back a little bit.
Nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because you're voting for us. Okay? You originally voted, you ran as an outsider. Yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine.
What?
You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China.
That is massively overstated. Who invaded who? Who invaded who? Russia invaded Ukraine.
This is once again the main thing I was referencing to as to how progressives are still hung up on this whole who invaded who, when anyone who has the precursor context to this would know that Ukraine was shelling the Donbass and like attacking the Luhansk, part of their own country, for 8 years following the Maidan coup. That's previous context that matters. And when you know that, you'll know that Russia wasn't really invading. They were retaliating on behalf of those people.
The U.S. didn't invade Ukraine. The U.S. didn't invade Russia. Ukraine didn't invade Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. So in the wake of Russia invading Ukraine, why is it a bad thing to give them defensive weapons?
That right there is an example of the asterisk of calling yourself anti-war and saying that it's good to give someone weapons. Because if you were truly anti-war, you wouldn't be getting them. You'd be staying completely neutral in all this. And that's why it's important to focus on. And the United States is involved in this. Look at the amount of money that they've sent to Nazis in Ukraine. That's why. The part of the United States in this matters very much. And Kyle's trying to deflect from that and say this is just about Russia and Ukraine, when that's far from the truth.
Now, look, I told you guys this. After the first, like, 2 or 3 packages, I would have started to wrap it up a little bit. You know, at this point, we've had, what, over a dozen packages sent to Ukraine, and it's been, like, somewhere between $50 billion and $80 billion worth of weapons sent to Ukraine. Yeah, I agree that's overkill. And yeah, I agree that's probably because, you know, the politicians are enriching the military-industrial complex. That's probably the thing that they...
And that's why you don't allow yourself to be okay with 1, 2, or even 3 packages. Because these greedy fucks that are in this military-industrial complex funneling scheme that's going on right now are greedy as fuck and are never going to be stopped. And there's no sensible, responsible distribution of weapons.
They care about first and foremost. So I don't deny that it's overkill, but to say that this means you want a nuclear war, what kind of bullshit is that? If the United States sent weapons to Palestinians to defend themselves against Israeli aggression, would this guy say, "Oh, you're a war hawk. You're pro-war"? My guess is no. My guess is he would understand.
That would actually be a correct action. Helping someone who needs help, standing up to their bully, like the way Palestine has been under attack by Ukraine. Yes, that is very true, Leah. And probably once he started to once he got with Crystal, Crystal let him know about it. Oh, he's so indie, saying the exact same crap mainstream media is saying. He's so courageous, too courageous for me. I am from 100% of content creators that knew how corrupt Biden is and said he was better than Trump. Oh. Yeah, I still hold on to a few of those people because it's easier to keep up with these really, really bad videos. Kelly, that's one of the stupidest things Kyle has ever said. We'd never send weapons or money to Palestine to fight off Israeli occupation. Because, yes, that is very true, because we know that the United States would be funding Palestine more, except it's disguised under the name of the Iron Dome. And for some reason, Zionism doesn't draw the same ire as Nazis.
Well, those are defensive weapons to the Palestinians. So that's very different by its nature, because it is defensive. But now, all of a sudden, you're saying this is, she wants nuclear war, she wants World War III. I have many criticisms of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I was criticizing her during Force the Vote. I was annoyed that she voted for Pelosi to be Speaker. She cast some terrible votes on the issue of Israel-Palestine. Like, I've criticized her. You can go back and check the Secular Talk YouTube library. But this criticism just doesn't make any sense.
There
will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth.
This is unbelievable. Who invaded who? Who invaded who?
Who is the aggressor? Who is the aggressor, Kyle? That's the point. That's not getting into his brain. The current aggressor is being backed by the United States and NATO. The same Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, who a week and a half ago called for preemptive strikes to Russia, the one thing that could potentially provoke Russia into using nukes.
Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia did the imperialist action. That's what happened. Now,
but the imperialist force of the United States is backing their current enemy. How does that make sense, Kyle?
I never would have expanded NATO in the first place to give them an excuse to invade, but it's very clear based on Putin's own words that he was probably going to do it anyway. He was talking about returning to the glory of the Russian Empire, about how Ukraine is a fake state, effectively. And the other reason why he probably invaded is there was just oil and gas discovered all over Ukraine. Wow, look at that. They discovered natural gas by Crimea in 2012, and then by 2014, Putin took it over. What a coincidence. So the criticism, like the criticism here is misplaced. Run it back a touch.
There's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward.
Look, there's a small percentage of Ukrainian fighters who are Nazis. It's the Azov battalion. And I've been calling all along for, if you're going to arm Ukraine, yes, there should be rules and strings attached, and none of them can go to the Nazis. That seems like a pretty straightforward thing and a fair thing. They haven't done that, right? The U.S. government hasn't done that. We don't know where a lot of the weapons are going.
There's no strings attached or conditions or hoops that you could make up that can qualify this as being any better, because we know that this military-industrial complex does not care about Nazis. The United States and Ukraine are two of the only countries in the world who are against denazifying. So we know that this whole fairy tale conditioning that would make you feel better about it would never exist. Then for Kyle to also be talking about not wanting expansion of NATO, this is where another parallel where Kyle comes very short to people to his left, which is us wanting to call for NATO to be abolished. And we know that when it comes to real State Departments, Kyle Kulinski would not be calling for abolition.
Fair criticism there. But also, this guy's not being anywhere near nuanced enough, because the fact of the matter is, there's also a far-right problem and a Nazi problem in Russia. And they're the ones who are doing the offensive invasion. They are the ones who are breaking international law. So if you wanted to question Ocasio-Cortez and say, hey, can you propose a bill to, like, as you send weapons to Ukraine, to have it not go to Nazis, I'd be agreeing with him. I'd be saying, look, that's fair. If you asked Ocasio-Cortez, hey, could you please prod Biden to say, let's have some sort of diplomatic process, some sort of negotiations to try to bring this thing to an end before it spirals out of control, I would totally agree with this guy. But he's just spazzing out and yelling, and the criticisms are not really coherent.
You know, that being nice. Kyle, this is him saying that he has to be nicer to politicians again. Always that little hang-up that keeps him falling short of his potential growth. And that's why he's stagnated and stunted into a figment of what he is now. Someone who can't get anywhere beyond. He's capped his ceiling. He's descending from his prime, and that has been for like a good 3 years or so. But the newer people that see his content don't realize it until they spend around his channel for a few months. Exactly. We know that playing nice with these politicians aren't going to get us anywhere. Haven't we, World Court, just try and judge a World War II Nazi in the last 2 years and now 113 billion to Nazis this year so far? Oh yeah, thanks DNC, DCC, RNC/GOP. Kyle's talking out of both sides of his mouth, a symptom of blue MAGA derangement syndrome. Yes, and Kyle's probably going to tell you how he didn't vote in the next election. Yeah, he's going to talk like someone who supports people who he claims he wouldn't vote for.
He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you...
Guts. Tulsi's shown guts, guys. This is Tulsi showing guts. Leaving the Democrats, not just because they're too pro-war, but also because they're too woke and they attack religious liberty or something. And, oh yeah, by the way, even though I just said Democrats are too pro-war, I'm going to go stump for Republicans, who are not just as pro-war, they are more pro-war.
You showed cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against. That's what you've become. You are the establishment, and you are the reason why everybody will end up in a nuclear war unless you choose to stand.
So AOC is the reason why everybody's going to be in a nuclear war. Not, I don't know, the person who would drop the nuke? Vladimir Putin?
No, because they're going to push. Because that vote is support of Ukraine and the United States and NATO getting involved to provoke, because this could still be a United States dropping nukes on Russia. This has more to do with just those two countries, Kyle.
He's not the reason? The guy who would do it if it's going to be done. He's not the problem? I understand reserving some criticism for the West, saying you have to insist on some sort of diplomatic end to this. I get that. So you want to put some of the blame at the people who are escalating out of control. I agree with you, right? But you're totally missing the plot if you're discussing this as if the U.S. is steering the ship, the U.S. is to blame.
They are. They're doing it for Ukraine.
Or Ukraine is to blame. Because Ukraine didn't start the war. The U.S. didn't start the war.
Ukraine did. You're ignoring 8 previous years.
Russia started the war.
Stop right now and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you do that?
Okay, well, so let me ask you a question. If AOC denounces the Democratic Party, but she then goes on to stump for Republicans, would you give her the same credit that you're giving Tulsi Gabbard? Just curious.
Yes or no? Okay, simple. Are you going to stop nuclear war? Yes.
Are you going to stop nuclear war? Look, I'll say it again, man. I would have voted for the first like 2 or 3 defense aid packages to Ukraine. After that, I would have pumped the brakes on it, right? But I don't think you can say, this is not a fair criticism to say that the people who are continuing to vote for defensive aid to Ukraine, that they are pro-nuclear war. That's not a fair criticism. That's not accurate. Again, I'll make this analogy one more time. If the U.S. decided we're going to give a lot of weapons to Palestinians to defend themselves against Israeli aggression, is it a fair thing to say?
All right, I think we got the main gist of this one. Point is, Kyle is so hung up on only the 2 countries involved here. He doesn't see the outside agitators at hand and how they're the ones who are part of the problem. And Kyle is just pretty much telling you why, even if he could somehow get into office, that he would not be anti-war. He would fall in line with that system. Just in the same, all those same Justice Democrats that he tried to help get in, and how they have fallen in line, by and large, of the shitty U.S. foreign policy. When Kyle Kulinski told y'all that he would support the first 2 or 3 packages, that means he has surrendered for all the future ones as well. And every politician who supports Ukraine will be part of the problem. And that's why every politician that we can get to change their mind in this very moment can make themselves no longer part of said problem. And yes, I believe when CJ went through the comments section of this video on an earlier stream today, there were a few people calling Kyle out for going for this type of these aspirations. Very much so, Kelly. So fun to play with other people's money. And that's one of the big problems. They don't treat it like it could be ours. But now let's I know that people haven't really gone in on exposed Hassan Piker in specific to his bad coverage here, but we'll take a moment to give you a quick overview on it. It's a bit different from Kyle. There's some slight differences, but it's still not really any better. So I'll at least give you a few minutes so you can get a real feel for how this is, as this video was back on Wednesday.
Good morning, Robin. Kyiv is on edge. We woke up to the sound of several loud bangs at just after 8 a.m. Smoke rising from the city centre. This is
it's valid.
a clear escalation. And as you say, Putin saying he personally ordered these strikes.
This is straight up terrorism. When Putin says, oh, well, you know, what goes around comes around, you shouldn't have blew up our bridge. And I saw plenty of people saying, well, that's technically infrastructure. It's valid to blow that up. Ultimately, it goes back to who struck the first blow. And the country that struck the first blow is still Vladimir Putin. It's still Russia. So what ended up happening is, regardless, state-sponsored terrorism in the form of state war, military action, started when Vladimir Putin decided to invade Ukraine. What Ukraine did in blowing up the Crimean Bridge was also a ridiculous act of war. I don't care if you get mad at me for saying this, blowing up civilian infrastructure that civilians utilize because military equipment passed through it. The bridge was used for Russian military sources. I know there are a lot of civilian targets and civilian infrastructure that oftentimes are valid targets. There's rules to war. I think what Russia did in Western Ukraine is worse than what Ukraine did in Crimea. But I still think that what Ukraine did in Crimea is bad. Of course.
I mean, Hassan's chat moves so damn fast, but I at least saw one person in that chat say, "Rad libs are so damn stupid."
Of course, what Russia is doing is significantly worse. What Russia has been doing since day one is significantly worse because they are the ones who are invading.
So, as predictable fashion, Hassan completely ignores the previous 8 years of Ukraine showing the Donbass and the Luhansk, and discards that as not being that bad.
None of this would happen if they hadn't invaded. This is why my main point has always been, this is why war is awful across the board. Because civilians end up getting killed in the process. I can't sit here and fucking act like, bombing civilian targets and civilian infrastructure is ultimately a good thing and justifiable. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. The main perpetrators of the circumstance are, of course, the Russian forces and Vladimir Putin. I don't think anyone has an issue with that take.
And if you are serious about being anti-war and talking about how bad it is on both sides, then your first focus should be attacking the United States for how they've wanted to be involved in using the Ukrainians as cannon fodder. If you're still getting all hung up on Russia and the United States is not actively backing Russia, then why the fuck are you so focused on Russia right now?
I mean, or if you do, you're a fucking psycho. You're out of your mind.
And as has been the case in many major cities across Ukraine, these strikes have not targeted military sites, they've targeted civilian sites, things like power plants and water facilities. This seems to be Putin's response to the attack in Crimea, collective punishment to the entire Ukrainian population. What happened there?
This morning, Russia launching multiple attacks across Ukraine.
This is so fucked up, dude.
Just another thing to throw out there is, you notice the type of media sources that Hassan Piker is using? Very much the corporate pro-Ukrainian side of this proxy war. You ever going to see Hassan Piker feature work of people who are actually on the ground there covering this as it unfolds right now, like Eva Bartlett, Vanessa Beeley, Wyatt Reed? Those are people who are actually out there risking their lives to show you what's really happening in like the Donbass. And you notice that these progressives like Hassan Piker and Kyle Kulinski, they wouldn't even take that into their assessment. And Fiorella Isabel, also someone who's covering this from Russia. Something that actually does matter. And there's a lot of other people, like Scott Ritter, for example. Gray Zone's had a few good guests who can give you a more balanced coverage of what's going on right now. And you've got a guy with this Queen and Obama life-size cutout using corporate media in his streams.
Russia deliberately targeting utilities, power plants and water supplies, but also civilian sites are being hit and many people now hiding in shelters across Ukraine.
You really can't just say whatever you want to say is terrorism. I mean, what kind of precedent does that set? Terrorism designation across the board is a political one that is utilized by state actors to make non-state actors, or even sometimes state actors that are their enemies, to come across like they're doing something, extra illegal, right? Not just Ukrainian civilians. They're the ones who are getting fucked.
And in the aftermath, Putin also appointing a new general to oversee the war in Ukraine. I mean, General Sergei Surovikin, known as the Butcher in Syria, for his role as the commander there at the time of the Aleppo mass bombardment. Now, mounting fears of Putin's next move.
You have modern nuclear power, and the leader of that modern nuclear power.
John Kirby's statements on this shit is why I'm fucking terrified. John Kirby has been going on every fucking news broadcast and talking about the possibility of maybe a baby nuke being used. I can't help but feel like they know something that we don't, as always, where they're basically stating, maybe a nuke might go off, maybe a tactical nuke might go off, but it's just a little baby nuke, which is just fucking insane. Are they gearing us up for a potential Russian nuke being launched, like a tactical nuke or something? So that they can be like, yeah, we knew about it ahead of time, we told you. But it's still a fucking nuke. It's still a nuke. Thousands will die. And they even have said that they would potentially blow up the fleet, like the Russian fleet in the Black Sea. They will attack it if a nuke does go off. But beyond that, they don't necessarily have any kind of additional defense measures in place. Obviously, you can't speak on it so openly, but that's part of the reason why I'm worried about the things.
Let me jump a couple minutes further to where he talks about negotiation, if I can remember where that spot is at.
I understand that. And from what I understand, nuclear technology is so goddamn insane and so fucking powerful that like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atomic bombs look tiny in comparison, which is insane to say. This notion that we're having conversations about like whether or not we could survive nuclear Armageddon or nuclear Holocaust or nuclear winter is insane. It is dark. 1 kiloton to 3 kiloton tactical nuke bombs are smaller than Nagasaki. Doesn't Putin get bumped the second he decides to use a nuke by his own general staff, maybe? These are all super old conversations that people had during the Cold War when there was the original nuke scare, you know? And you can't rely on that. You can't make policy around like hoping that someone will fucking off the leader before they hit the button. Like I've heard this so many fucking times. If you've read anything about mutually assured destruction, you've heard people say that. You've heard people talk about those like hypothetical scenarios, and relying on that Hail Mary in a situation where nukes are flying is a little wild. I'll just say it like that. I don't know if I'm willing to bet on that. You know, there's actually no point in today's attacks. It's terrorism, sure, but it doesn't get anyone in Ukraine. People are used to all of it. Bro, it doesn't matter. It's still horrific. What the fuck do you mean? Ukrainians in my chat are like, bro, it's fine. 12 people died. That's crazy. I mean, I'm sorry that like you're used to ongoing terror in your life, but no, striking especially Western Ukrainian targets is fucking psychotic. It is completely unacceptable. That's terrorism. They hit civilian infrastructure to say, hey, you hit our civilian infrastructure, we're going to hit your civilian infrastructure even worse. That's what they did. That was that. That was the main reason why Russia did this, and they openly stated it as such. And it's completely unacceptable. People have gotten used to it in Ukraine at this point. My uncle was on the phone and a bomb struck nearby. He just comes and said, oh, bomb, I'll be right back. The goal or the purpose of these Russian targets, like Russia targeting Western Ukraine, is to strike fear and destabilize Ukrainian civilian population life. Because as far as I understand, regardless of how traumatic that existence has been, Ukraine is, by and large, on the Western side, gone back to business as usual. Obviously not fully business Putin has done, while the American State Department on media is routinely referencing potential nuclear weapons on the fucking ground, all the way to state violence and military violence. Okay, state violence like what Russia is conducting. You either escalate or you de-escalate. If you de-escalate and you move towards a treaty, especially when you're making big gains on the Eastern Front, you can try your best to try and come to terms with Putin, which it does not seem like Ukraine is interested in doing, and you can make legitimate arguments as to why they can't. How could you trust Russia? But ultimately, all state actors that are involved in this, and I mean Western actors as well, and China, need to come to the table all together and put an end to this. Medvedev said today the goal is still to change the regime in Kyiv. Russians aren't interested in a negotiated settlement still. Absolutely.
All right, but if you are actually serious about getting all people pushed to the table and getting this shit ended, then you would be focusing on getting the United States and NATO to not be involved in this, because they're the ones who want this to be a never-ending war. And if you continue to get caught up in the Russophobia, then you're just going to end up continually propping up the NATO and the whole continuance of this proxy war. Exactly, Kelly. That's the main problem right there. Russia has reportedly been open to negotiation. However, Zelensky is against it. And it's framed like, oh, we can't trust Russia. That's why there won't be no negotiation. Well, that shit's actually really the other way around. It's the refusal of Ukraine, because if this had happened, then Russia doesn't start to retaliate in late February. And that's the main thing that these progressives aren't getting in the professional managerial class, is what's really, there's a lot more to this. There's more than two teams involved. There's agitators who are making this shit worse, like the United States and NATO are. And they don't get, in order for this to actually get better and put to an end, it requires pulling the United States backing away from, and NATO backing away from this shit. And that's what your focus should be on if you're so-called anti-war. Because which government can you get to respond to your anti-war message first? It should obviously start with the country that you're living in first, before you get hung up in the semantics and trying to argue about other countries that aren't aligned with the biggest imperial force in the world, in the United States. And you're talking about the so-called imperialism of countries who are enemies of the United States right now. And if the United States wasn't involved, then I suppose you could talk about other countries practicing imperialism. But until that happens, my focus is laser-eyed on the United States. And there was one other thing that I didn't get to yet. I kind of left this point on the table for a few possessions with Kyle when he tried to bring up Russian Nazis are also involved in attacking too. Which Nazis right now are the United States backing? The ones in Ukraine. If the United States wasn't involved in this conflict at all, we could have a more fair discussion about Nazis on that side too. But for now, it goes back to the whole holding your own government accountable first, and it's obviously going to start with the ones that the United States is backing over stuff like this, which could be getting addressed more so. I personally don't know anyone affected by this proxy war. I do know people struggling to afford groceries and medication, putting gas in their tanks, and paying off high interest rate student loans. Those are the issues your average person is feeling right now, as Kelly is alluding to right here. And that's why when they try to argue, there's people who try to argue this online politics is not real life. But tell me which side is going to break through to more regular people who aren't aware of what's going on right now. Because I'm sure I could get more people convinced of the arguments I'm making right now. And I can get them there pretty quickly once I talk about the boatloads of money that are being sent to support weapons for Ukraine, when this is the type of stuff that could be getting addressed instead. Imagine how if the Nord Stream pipeline was just a huge bomb, pumping smoke being cooled by miles of Baltic water. Oh man. And the good news is, at least some of the other NATO countries, citizens in other NATO countries, are actually more upset about this shit than what citizens in the United States are. But I just had to show you how there's a major lack of depth in the analysis of what's going on right now. They aren't talking about all the people in Europe who are going to freeze to death this winter because their politicians have made the choice that being against Russia is more important than their people having heat and having other food and essential necessities to survive and get by. That's a choice that their citizens are having to suffer from right now. And all you hear from these Western progressives is them being deep-throated by Russia-gating propaganda and not being able to see beyond the basic surface level here. And that's exactly the frustrating part about what's going on right now. It's just a very, very basic 2D. They're presenting two-dimensional chess to their audiences right now. And people like us are trying to do our part to show how it's 4D, 5D, and 6D chess unfolding in front of our very eyes. And they're doing a major disservice to their viewers by stopping short of where they are. And I think this, and I'm going to pull up a tweet by Savage Joy Marie, because this illustrates a good theme of the problem with not taking foreign policy seriously enough. Hi, we're literally paying for Ukraine's healthcare while we suffer and die without any. So let me scroll through and find some examples of the problematic responses to this. Why the fuck are people shocked by this? I've seen articles of spending breakdowns for months. And this is a photo of a New York Times article showing that example of the type of assistance that Ukraine is getting right now. And we can clearly say that the United States easily needs a shit ton of economic support for this inflation, food assistance, healthcare, and other aid. So, yes, they are paying for their healthcare. And here's this first example. Those two things are not related to each other, since domestic policy has literally dozens of hurdles, even before filtered through federalism. But if you want to jump on the bandwagon with Rand Paul, go ahead. They want you to think that this has dozens of hurdles. But the thing is, those hurdles don't exist when it comes to the U.S. war machine in the same way that it does for U.S. domestic policy. And this is the type of brainworms that some of the progressives have, is the fact that they believe that the United States can continue to maintain its asinine garbage foreign policy as long as they get health care. They'll be fine with it. Have you seen if they're not gonna bend on foreign policy? What makes you think that domestically things are gonna improve for us? Which is why the connection, the intersectionality of both being important is absolutely necessary. Oh yeah, it's definitely a whole fucking lot of that. Oh, yeah, I wonder if the DPRK WCSN is eventually going to be in that whole China-Russia coalition. I don't think I've heard much in regards of where they fall in this current issue. And yes, for people who think that Ukrainians are actually regular Ukrainians are actually benefiting from this, they absolutely aren't. It's their government that is largely benefited from this whole funneling of money in the tune of billions of dollars that the United States has been doing for nearly 8 months now. Zelensky has been gifted at least 5 mansions around Europe, I've heard. I'm not surprised, because if that's true, because once you're part of their club, you're going to get a lot of perks from that. And yes, that club does extend to foreign allies. Let's see, is there anything else? This person sounds like a liberal who is just going to shrug their shoulders and say, fuck it, why bother? I wish it were the case, but unfortunately most of the money is spent on weapons. Sounds very much like a liberal who has shrugged their shoulders and has no purity. And someone else who thinks that this is... Imagine coming out against humanitarian aid for a country that being invaded. Except for the fact that it's not really happening that way. The money's not trickling down to the citizens. As this person right here corrects them with lethal aid. That's all it really is. And this person is another one, has that other progressive brainworm thinking, giving that the U.S. healthcare system would famously save money and deliver better health outcomes under single payer system. Why not do that and send the spare coin to Ukraine? First off, it's not ever going to go down like that. Ever. And if the source of money, if anything ever comes, it's going to come from a military-industrial complex. That's the source. The nationwide police funding, military-industrial complex. Those are two of the top sources. Any state departments are the ones that are going to help us with a universal healthcare system. It's not going to be, oh, we just take the middleman out of private healthcare and the military-industrial complex exist as is. It's not ever going to fucking work that way. Ever. And you know that this type of thinking is largely influenced by the white progressives, who ultimately are indifferent on war when it comes time to take a true courageous stand on it. And when it comes to actually trying to be not come over as racist like liberals, like covertly racist like liberals, they fail at that too. Anything else here? Oh, another example of liberal brainworms. We spend a lot of money on healthcare, just not efficiently. Don't blame Ukrainians for American domestic problems. I'm probably biased because my family is from Romania and had to flee here from wanting things like freedom of speech and food. And that's what a lot of people don't get. The foreign policy is the priority that trickles down and causes the problems for everything else. And that's where it starts. So that makes this point a moot point. And this is why progressives are so unserious. Tax the rich, Medicare for all, unlimited military aid for Ukrainians to fight off their oppressors. This is the way. And this sounds exactly like people who listen to Vosh and Destiny. The liberal fairy tales are insane in that thread that were deep in the replies of Savage Joy. But it illustrates one of the big points that need to be made here. And that's the fact that foreign policy is what should be at the priority of your politics. Because guess who the political establishment is prioritizing first? The foreign policy. And guess which source of funding? If you successfully make inward progress on getting the budget cut from, you think that healthcare or living wages are going to come from. It's not going to come from little tweaks and reforms around the edges of domestic policy. It's easily going to be the absurd amount of money that gets spent in the United States. That's where it's all going to start from. And it also is very telling about how these people do not have the same type of care for like Palestinians and Syrians, Libyans, Afghanis, and Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, Colombians. Because if they did, they would realize how important it is to be principled for their safety as much as the safety of their own fellow citizens here. Tax the rich, Medicare for all, and yeah, I want someone with that person smoking. I don't know, but that's a good one to take a hit to, Kelly. That was a good hit call, Kelly. But the last thing for tonight is the whole unveiling of the NAFO troll farm. And of course, I didn't want like too much attention drawn to this, even though I'm a really small YouTube channel. But I felt like it was still necessary to highlight this. Hey, Andrew, can you find stories on Germans who escaped from their whole land before the stuff really went down and where they go and for the time while they're there? Yeah, that'll be something worth looking into. I'm not like I'm not like the best researcher there is. I could be better at that. That's one point of improvement there that can definitely be made in due time. But if I have familiar sources, I'm pretty good like uh, breaking down and deciphering them. When it comes to like stuff that I'm less familiar with, then it becomes harder. Like that's why I haven't really talked much about Iran, except I can tell you on a basic surface level that uh, seeing the messages that are like U.S. regime inspired as opposed to like what actual Iranians are would tell you. Oh yes, we'll get into that, Kelly. The answer to NAFO is North Atlantic Fellow Organization. So let's get into this thread. So, for example, NAFO founder Kamil Tajewski is an anti-Semitic gamer from Poland. And here's some examples of this. This tweet right here, highlighting a notification. Nearly 2/3 of young Americans do not know 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. Study finds. And that was said in a mocking sort of way. And that's a couple other examples of his anti-Semitism. The original fella is a Nazi. What a surprise. And him with the Hitler admiration. And back during the height of the George Floyd protest, him calling people who run over protesters based. When we know that is the absolute opposite. Then Masa Robeson also has a bunch of notes on the NAFO trolls in this link right here. I won't be going with it, but this will give you a better close-up of the fellas. I'm going to put that up a bit larger to show you that these are a bunch of the dogs who are trying to tell their people, oh, it doesn't matter now. They've grown from that. Here's some more of those dogs backing their Nazi leader, which we all know is a bunch of like trolls from Langley, Virginia, trying to put their backing behind a garbage person. So Kelly, I know that you're not on Twitter, but these are what the types of like photos with dogs on them that you'll see. And once people start to, if they get a big enough of a platform, they're going to get attacked in the replies and the quote tweets like crazy from anyone who calls them out. I mean, Nick Cruz of Revolutionary Blackout Network, he had his moment of being attacked by NAFO. But you know who gets it worse than anyone on Twitter? Who has NAFO all up in his replies, following every single tweet? Black in the Empire. Someone who's been a vocal critic of the United States' involvement in this proxy war. And every damn tweet that Black in the Empire has made, you'll see these NAFO dogs all up in the replies, smearing him relentlessly. They've been doing things like trying to call him a Proud Boy because they found some photo of a Proud Boy that looks similar to him. When we can know that this guy, Daryl, Black in the Empire, is a veteran who has been through war, who is speaking against the U.S. Empire. And of course, he's getting attacked harder because he is a black man speaking against the U.S. Empire. And more examples of coping. And, you know, liberals are always, especially white liberals, by the way, always the quickest people to push forgiveness for the racist friends and family. Like these examples right here. Instead of that being showing why they're so sus. And more examples. Doubling down on Nazis, I see. And I got to show you a big theme of this, the quote tweets here that I saw. Someone with the right take there. And yesterday on Twitter, Nazis in Ukraine trended for the right reason. I got to scroll down. Oh, there was a ton of these quote tweet responses. And that's sick, to be honest. Very, very sick. And those are the bots, the troll farms. They're going after people speaking against the United States involvement in this proxy war. And there's hundreds of them. And that's one example of why I'm glad I'm not a huge Twitter account yet, because I know that I would probably be having to be regularly active in blocking them. That way they can't try to mass report me, because there was a moment that Black in the Empire's Twitter account was temporarily down on, I believe, Friday or Saturday. By the way, he is one of the members of Indie News Network, even though he hasn't been on their programming in several months. He is one of their members, and that is an important distinction to make. And those are the type of, and that's what you have to deal with as they're fighting anyone who tries to challenge the Western narrative that is being presented here in this current proxy. And with that being said, I'd like to thank you all so much for coming out on a Sunday night and joining me on another episode of the Rochford Files with your host, Andrew Rochford. As y'all know, go to the link tree in the description below. Please click on the link there and support me on other platforms as well. And don't forget to like if you haven't yet, share, subscribe, follow on Twitch. As for yes, thanks so much. Much love to. Yes, I've been trying to work on that. I know that it doesn't always help my sub count as much as I would like. I mean, I had Chuck Modi on a couple months ago, and that didn't really. What was funny about that is it didn't really move the needle as much because that was the guest who's had the most Twitter followers of anyone I've had on the show so far. But yeah, I'm trying to work on it when possible. But some people that I would like to have on the show aren't exactly reachable, or when I try to send DMs or emails, they don't respond. And I know that would be helpful, but I'm definitely trying. I'm trying to at least get guests on Wednesdays, and I'm not sure if I'll have a show on Wednesday this week because part of my vacation is like going away from home for at least a couple days, since I am on vacation right now. And oh yeah, there's one thing I do need to do before I on the way out. So, yes. Yeah, y'all should go here after I end, as in about 10 minutes or so, Indy and Reef Breland will be doing another episode of How Did We Miss That? So y'all should definitely jump over to there once I end this stream shortly, as Indy has definitely helped out with sharing whenever I schedule new streams for this on Twitter through once I set that up on StreamYard. So we'll see about what happens in the upcoming week. Also, shout out to Jimmy Sunderland, a recent guest as well, as y'all should be tuning in, if possible, to What? And that's a show Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern to around 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Then another show to plug is Anarchy in the Morning with Steve Poikinen and Craig Pasta Jardula from 10 a.m. Eastern to 1 p.m. Eastern on Rockfin. So those are a couple things I regularly have on when I'm at work. I would plug Black Power Media as well, but I'm normally sleeping, and I do plug their stuff. I would plug that too if you're up from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, but normally us people on the west aren't the western part of the country aren't up early enough for that. But with that being said, go go on over to Indie News Network. This is Andrew Rochford saying, take this shit off the internet and bump it outside. Goodbye and good night.